Hi again, and welcome to the Module 3 of the Data Analytics course on Sumim NG. I'm still Kubiat Morgan, and I'll be taking you in this module. In this module, we are going to start by exploring autofills and the flash fill functionality in Excel, as well as doing more with functions and formulas in Excel. We're going to be starting with basic use of formulas from arithmetic operations down to VLOOKUPs and if-error functions. Let's get right into it. There are many features in Excel that enable you work efficiently and smarter, one of which is autofill. Excel can perform autofills on different data types like numbers, dates, months, days, and even list items. Now, Excel automatically recognizes the data type and then attempts to autofill it. The easiest way to perform an autofill is by simply clicking on the very first data or the very first cell. Move your cursor to the bottom right corner of that cell. Once you move your cursor to that bottom right corner, you will notice that your cursor changes from a white cursor with black border to a black cursor with white border. And then you can simply click and drag vertically or horizontally to autofill. In this case, we can notice that Excel has simply automatically filled in the data, the exact same data that was in cell A2. However, in some other scenarios, what we might want to do, we might want to fill this sequentially. In order to do that, we can either click on the autofill options that comes out here and select fill series. Once we click on fill series, you can see that the autofill options has automatically been updated to complete a series of numbers from 1 to 9. A more traditional approach of performing an autofill is by selecting the range of cells in which you want to autofill, and then on the home ribbon, you locate the fill button. When you click on the fill button, you can select series, and in the drop down that appears, you have the options to adjust the fill the way you want it to. In this case, we are not filling rows, we intend to fill columns, series in columns. We want the type of fill to be linear, and then the step value to be 1. If you wanted to put up a step value of 2, you would probably do that as well. We don't need a stop value because we've already selected where we want the data to end, and we just click OK. And we can see that we've replicated the same action like we did when we use the shortcut. The same thing can also occur for dates. We can either click here and drag down, and we can see here that Excel automatically calculates the dates in series from 23rd of September 2020 down to 1st of October 2020. You can also perform the same action by using the fill button on the home ribbon. Let's see how the fill works on months. For months, we do the same thing take our mouse to the bottom right corner and simply click and drag. And you can see that once Excel has automatically detected a month, once you attempt to autofill, it would fill in series the rest of the months. If what you want to fill, if you don't want to fill this in sequence and you just want to repeat January up until the last column here, you can simply use the fill options, autofill options here, and instead of selecting fill series, you can just select copy cells, and that will just duplicate the value of the very first cell across all the cells. So you can use these options, toggle, pending, depending on the kind of data you're intending to. Same thing goes for days. If we drag this, we can see that Excel automatically fills the day from Monday to Sunday and then started again from Monday. We can observe the same thing with list items. So Excel will automatically increment an item that has a number at the end. And you can see something like this. So this can be very useful when you're performing data entry. This can be very useful when you're performing data entry, so you don't have to manually enter most of this data. The last type of autofill we're going to look at is flash fill. Now, for flash fills to work in Excel, and it's important to also point out that flash fills only work in Excel versions from 2013 upwards. Flash fills only work if Excel can identify a pattern in the data sets that you're trying to extract data from. So in this case, we have some data on this end, and then we want to extract the number that is between the slashes in this data. And as you can see, there is a pattern. So to perform a flash fill, you must first give Excel an example. So in this case, we've given Excel an example by taking out 54678, the number from this data set here. Now, once we've done that, we can then perform a flash fill by either using the same format as we did with autofill, clicking at the bottom right corner and dragging. And once we've dragged, you see here that the action that is performed is copy cells. So we click on the autofill options, and we are not going to be selecting copy cells. We will not be selecting fill series. We would now select flash fill. And you can see, if you observe with the data, that Excel automatically identifies the pattern and extracts the number that we need. We can also use flash fill to format names like this into email addresses, or basically any data format. But in this case, we are trying to convert, first and last names like this into email addresses in this format. So what we do first is we give Excel an example by writing what the converted data should look like, and then we simply click and drag. Just like we observed in the first example, Excel has automatically performed a copy cell operation here. So what we can do is to click the autofill options and select flash fill. And you can see that Excel automatically computes, from the example we gave, it computes the rest of the data in the format that we need it to be. This can be a very useful tool when you are filling, or you have to enter data for This can prove very useful when you're performing data entry for a very large data set. In the same vein, we can also use flash fields on phone numbers to format them. So if we wanted to format a phone number in this way, so these are like list of phone numbers, and you wanted to format them in this way, you could first give Excel an example, and then clicking on the bottom right corner, you click and drag, and then you notice that it's very important to notice the outputs that you get. Right now, the output that we are getting is a field series because Excel first automatically incremented the number that we're trying to populate. But if we change the autofill options from field series to flash fill, we can see that we have automatically filled in the data. Finally, Excel's flash fill can also work with extracting numbers from series of text like this. And to do that, just as we've done in previous examples, we simply give Excel an example. In this case, we want to extract 2, 3, 70.5, 1345, and 155.67. So we give Excel an example, and then we click the bottom right corner and drag down. Then click the autofill options and select flash fill. Now, if you take a look at the data set now, you will notice that we have an issue with cell B28 and cell B30. What Excel did was take the number after the decimal points for both of those cells, which is not what we are looking for. In order to fix this issue or this error with Excel, we would have to stop our flash fill halfway. So we would have to delete this and give Excel an example of a decimal point. In this case, we'll put this manually. So this is one of the limitations of flash fill with Excel. So once we've given that example and we continue with the autofill and we select flash fill, you would notice that Excel now gets the decimal points or the decimal numbers correctly. So this is one very important limitation to note with flash fill. If you're working with data and there is a break in the data type, in this case it was a change from integers to decimal, note that flash fill would not respond as expected at that point, so you would have to provide another example for the data type that you're trying to flash fill and then proceed. Now, when it comes to formulas in Excel, a formula is basically an expression that operates on values in a range of cells or like a particular cell. While we have functions are basically predefined formulas in Excel. So a function has a function name and parameters that function is going to act on. The parameters of a function are usually found within parentheses, that is within a bracket. We're going to see how that works in a few. Before we go ahead to write a formula in Excel, it's very important for us to understand what the formula bar does. So if you look just below your ribbon, you have a bar here, a long bar, and this bar is called the formula bar. The formula bar usually displays the current value or the value of the active cell So whatever cell you're currently selecting, you will notice that the formula bar would display the value of that cell, as you can see in the few selections that we've done so far. However, the formula bar is also where we can insert formulas. So we can either insert a formula in the formula bar, or we can insert the formula as data in our active cell. Now, we use formulas basically to calculate things like sum, product, subtractions, multiplications, divisions, averages, perform counts on data sets, and so on and so forth. The data set that is before us here is basically an inventory list for a PHC, a primary healthcare center in Kanke. And this inventory list basically just gives us an idea of what commodities are in the store at the time, number of cartons, the quantity per carton, how many pieces, right, are in the store. And so we are left, or we are tasked with finding the total number of items in the store. So this is basically an excerpt from an inventory list for PHC Kanke, and let's see how we can use formulas to complete the data set that we have here. If we take a look now, we have that we need to calculate the total number of items in the store, and according to this data set, in order to calculate the total number of items in the store, we would need to multiply the number of cartons by the quantity per carton and add them to the pieces in the store, right? So once we've done this, we should be able to get the total number of items in the store. Now let's write a simple formula to calculate this. In order to write a formula in Excel, we would select the field or the cell that we want the result of our formula to show up or to be displayed. Once we've double click on that cell, the very first thing we're going to type is the equal to sign. Now the equal to sign tells Excel that what you're about to write, or the data that you're about to enter in that particular cell, is no ordinary data but a formula. If we enter anything that is not a formula, for instance, if we enter text, you would see that Excel gives you an error here, because Excel is expecting an actual formula or an Excel formula after the equal to sign. What we are going to do now is see how to write that formula. To calculate the total number of items in the store, we want to multiply the number of cartons, which in this case is designated by C3, right? And then we want to multiply it by the quantity per carton, which for this row 3, right, is designated by D3. And then we add the results of both of them to the pieces in the store, which in this case is E3. We can open parenthesis and include C3. Now, the symbol to use as the multiplication or the product operator in Excel is not X but an asterisk, right? So an asterisk represents multiplication basically in Excel. So we say C3 asterisk D3. So you can see as we are typing that Excel is highlighting the cells that we are making reference to, and then we want to add the results of that computation to E3. Now at this point, it's worthy to note that arithmetic calculations in Excel uses the normal order of operations, which is brackets, exponentials, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. So what this means is that Excel is going to prioritize the computations based on the normal order of operations. So in this case, Excel is going to attempt to resolve the parentheses first, which would be multiplying C3 by D3, and then Excel would add the result of that computation to the value of E3. Now, once we are done writing a formula, you can observe also that the formula is also displayed on the formula bar. But once we press enter on our keyboard, you can see that the formula has been applied, and the value of F3 has now been calculated accordingly. Now, you would also notice that the formula has been automatically filled in for the rest of the range of F. Now, this is because the entire data set you see here is already created as a table, which is why we have that autofill by default. However, if we did not create this as a table, what you would notice would be that that value would only be populated for F3 because we only entered for F3. And in order to calculate or to compute for the rest of the commodities in the store, we would have to perform an autofill by moving our mouse to the bottom right corner and then clicking and dragging down till the end of the range. What this would do is it would duplicate the formula. Excel will automatically compute the formula for each of the rows. So you can see here that for row 5, the formula has been adapted to suit row 5. So it's now C5 times D5 plus E5. We have the same thing for row 8, C8 times D8 plus E8, and so on and so forth till we get to row 15. So say we wanted to compute the average of items in the store. What would that look like? So if we have a little label here and we say average, and then we know that to calculate an average, we would divide the grand total number of items in the store by the number of commodities that we have here. So if we wanted to do that, compute that manually, what we'll do is we would click in, start by writing a formula, the equal to. So instead of doing it one by one, we can just use the sum function and then a parenthesis open, and then we can enter the range that we want to compute the sum for. In this case, we are going to enter F3 because that's where we want to start from. That's the range we're starting from, through F15 because that's where we are stopping. And then I close the parenthesis. So I'm just going to go through this quickly again. We use the equal to tell Excel that we are about to write a formula, and then we introduce a function called sum to enable us add values across a particular range. Open a parenthesis so we can define the values we want to add. Enter the address range of the cells we intend to add, which in this case is F3 through F15, and then close the parenthesis. Now once we're done with this, we simply click enter, and you can see here that this is showing up as the sum, the grand total of all the items. However, that is not what we intend to do. We intend to calculate the average. So if we double click into this again, you can see that the formula is still in place. So what we want to do is we want to divide this sum by the total number of items that we have, the total number of commodities that we have. In this case, we know that from what we see here, we can see that there are 13 commodities. So what we're going to do is we use the backslash. So the backslash is used for division in Excel. So we use the backslash and then we enter 13. If I press enter, you can see here that Excel has computed the average number of items that are available in the store. Alternatively, to calculate the average of the number of items in the store, rather than explicitly type out the function like we have here, the formula like we have here, we can simply make use of Excel's average function in order to calculate the average. To do that, we are just going to use the cell just beside our own calculations for comparison purposes. And let's try. The average function in Excel takes in a parameter which is going to be the range of values that we are trying to calculate the average for. In this case, we are looking at F3 through F15, as that is where we have our data range for the total number of items, F3 through F15. Once we've supplied that into between the parentheses of the average function, we can just click enter, and you would see here that the computation or the calculation has been made, and we have something quite similar to what we initially calculated, but rounded to 2 decimal places. Now, if we want to make our initial computation here to round it to 2 decimal places, just like we have here from the result of the average function, what we can do is I'll just give this a label, average to 2 dp, and then we are going to use the round function. The round function basically rounds any value, any number that you give to it away from 0 to a specific amount of decimal places. So in this case, we want to round this number to 2 decimal places. And then to do that, we start by writing the formula. Don't forget to include your equal to sign. That is how you communicate to Excel that you're about to write a formula. And then we write the round function and open the parentheses. So the round function accepts only 2 parameters. The first being the number that you're trying to round, which in this case is F on F17. And then the next being the number of digits, that's the number of decimal places that you're trying to round it to. In this case, we want to round it to 2 decimal places. And so we write 2 and close the parentheses. So don't forget that you must always include these parentheses, else you would incur errors. And also the comma acts as a separator between parameters of a particular function. So I'll just press enter on my keyboard, and you can see here that this value has now been rounded to 2 decimal places, similar to what we had as the result of the average function. Now, just like you've seen us use the round function, the average function, the sum function, we have the product function. There are a lot and tons of functions that Excel offers to be able to manipulate data. However, these are like the most frequently used functions in Excel.